the good way to look at it from a sort of from this point of view is, if you look at animals, for example, most people tend to have compassion for animals. Now, that's because we tend to think, well, they can't think and reflect internally on their own existence and make decisions in the way that we can. So when we then take the view that we can do that, we then don't have the same compassion. We view ourselves a bit like a drill sergeant. So we're sort of like saying to ourselves, because you should know better. You mustn't do this. You mustn't do that. And very black and white, rigid thinking, because we know that so when we're in ourself, we can see how we're thinking. So we can have more compassion for others, but often not for ourselves. So the key is to try and look at ourselves as the same as if we'd have compassion for animals, that we're a living being, in the term human being. The job is just to be living on this rock floating through outer space. And we should have compassion for ourselves, because we are trying to fulfill our lives and get through the day as best we can and do different things in our short existence that we have here. So it's very important to look at that from a compassionate point of view. And when we do that, it really releases so much sort of weight that we're putting on our back, because we tend to be so rigid with ourselves and speak to ourselves like that. You must do this. You must do that. You must achieve this. You mustn't do this or whatever. And all these must this and must that. And then we tend to be just extremely firm with ourselves, because in our lives, we obviously are trying to survive and overcome different obstacles. And so the language of how we speak to ourselves in that sort of tough tone of like a drill sergeant, we've learnt to adopt, because in life there isn't too many second chances, so we have to be quite firm to not make mistakes and so on. So we've learned to speak to ourselves like that, but that actually isn't very helpful, because that actually keeps us very stuck, because it's so rigid. And if you watch my last video where I was talking about sort of problem solving and OCD, what happened with that video was a lot of people were messaging saying how it's interesting from the sort of self-reflection part. They didn't realize they're putting their foot on the gas pedal so much, trying to escape and sort of accelerate out of the problem, which was actually like accelerating in snow. And that was very much what was happening. People were trying to escape so hard that they were battling themselves, which is very much the process in the OCD struggle. So if you look at my last video on the YouTube channel, Problem Solving and OCD, I go into that in great detail. So I wanted to come on here very briefly today. I'm going to be back on here doing another questions and answers very soon. But I wanted to come on here briefly and talk about compassion. And that relates so much to themes like harm OCD, where in harm OCD what happens is we're so hard on ourselves. We're like, if I did this thing in the past, don't even know I did, I shouldn't even rest or relax for 1 second after what I did. And then it starts that chronic guilt, chronic shame and chronic anxiety cycle. So by having self-compassion for ourselves in all circumstances, whatever a human being could have done, then that helps to reduce that, because we're already being so hard on ourselves. That just gives that little bit of space. And yes, that's for whatever it's saying you did in the past. My OCD was specifically looking for things in the past constantly. What if you did this? What if you did that? And then as second I got some peace with a thing that I thought I might have done, it went, well, you did something worse, or you were older when that happened. And it keeps doing that, because every moment it could see me about to just sort of accept or be at peace, then it was like bang. And it's very important to understand those parts. People say, but I shouldn't be let off the hook. Well, no, it's not a case like that. It's, yes, an act can be wrong, but that doesn't make the human wrong. A human shouldn't be exactly that whack-a-mole, like Faceman just said at the bottom there. It's a whack-a-mole game. It's a very much like that, and it will just keep moving the goalposts. So it's learning to have compassion for ourselves, whatever the circumstances. Because the second you say, oh, but it was okay, I was 10 years old, it'll go, you're 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, and move right through the scale, moving the goalpost. And that's very frustrating for an OCD sufferer who doesn't understand this, because then they think, oh, I was so close, or I've just worked so hard on these exposures, finally got relief, and it's moved to something I didn't even care about last week. So it's going to do that, because that's the nature of it.